It's a tale of two Central American countries, both plagued with somewhat similar problems: corruption, violence, and government crackdowns. Rule of law has not fared so well in either country, with Honduras and Nicaragua both sinking towards the bottom of the list.
Honduras and Nicaragua both exemplify a recent regional trend of suppressing the right to protest and using excessive force against demonstrators.
However, Honduras is the only one out of the two that the U.S. seems to have a soft side for. Don't just take my word for it. Nicaragua is one of the U.S.'s tyrannical trio.
The spread of tyranny follows a predictable pattern. Media and opposition parties are silenced. The regime unleashes its militants to kidnap, torture, and execute dissidents.
But Honduras, well, they're a valuable ally, especially after they voted with the U.S. to legitimize Jerusalem as Israel's capital.
The people of Honduras stood with us in being able to make that decision for ourselves and decide where we want our embassy, and to know that that's our right. And so we greatly appreciate not just the support on that vote, but on so many votes that we have at the United Nations.
Now, both Nicaragua and Honduras cracked down on anti-government protests this year, but they've evoked quite different reactions from the U.S. When Nicaragua does it, it's a threat to the legitimacy of the current administration.
Every additional victim of this violence and intimidation campaign further undermines Ortega's legitimacy.
And when Honduras cracks down on protesters after a sketchy election, well, that's a time for people to hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
Coming off of the elections, where tensions were high and passions were flared, the United States thinks it's very important that the people come together, that we start to become inclusive in the way we find success in Honduras.
But that's words. Now, what about the money? The U.S. is shoveling military and economic aid Honduras's way. 68 million tax dollars worth. And at the very same time, Nicaragua is about to be slapped with further sanctions. Just last week, Congress passed the NICA Act over the Latin American country's corruption and human rights violations. So, two countries with very similar problems, but two very different approaches.
The view of those two countries has been highly distorted by the mainstream media and by the U.S. government. The United States is not concerned about human rights and democracy. In fact, we know that the U.S. supports 73% of the world's dictatorships, but uses human rights very arbitrarily and selectively in order to justify its own geopolitical ends. Nicaragua, of course, is a classic example of that, where the U.S. supported the Somoza dictatorship for decades. And then when there was a popular revolution by the Sandinistas, worked for over 10 years supporting contra-terror against that country. People forget about that, and those things need to be remembered in the context of the situations we're talking about today.